Again, Wes, thanks so much for taking the time to chat. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Wes Ball. I'm a filmmaker out in Los Angeles. I guess some people know me from my short Ruin back in the day, a little animated short I made. And then from that, I got the Maze Runner movie, and that became a Maze Runner franchise. and almost made Mouse Guard, which probably I'm sure a lot of VFX guys have seen the little test that I leaked out. And almost got that thing made, and it kind of crashed and burned, but that's okay because it was great. It was a great experience, and now I'm working on the next Planet of the Apes movie. So definitely in that world of VFX. That's a good thing.
I was just curious, like, for you growing up, like, did you always imagine yourself doing something creative, whether it was writing, animation, art, or
Yep.
something?
Yeah, pretty much. I grew up in a really small town in Florida. I mean, really small town. Like we had no stoplights in my town. Okay, so it was very, very small. I spent a lot of time watching VHS tapes, because the closest theater to us was an hour away. So we didn't go to the theater. So I watched a lot of HBO, and had a satellite dish out in the middle of nowhere. So I was able to record a lot of movies. So I wore those tapes out while I sat on the floor playing Legos. So I was building constantly, and I knew pretty early on that I wanted to. It's hard to say. Like I didn't know I wanted to make movies necessarily, but I knew I wanted to be a part of that process, I guess, because for the longest time I wanted to be a pyrotechnic artist. So I would take apart my old fireworks, and I'd take my sister's Barbie car, and I'd take the old crappy VHS camera, and I'd set it up, and I'd try to blow it up and try to make it cinematic. And then there was another phase where I wanted to be a stunt guy, and then there was other earlier phases where I found myself wanting to be whatever I was currently watching. Like I'd watch, Michael Biehn and Navy SEALs, and I thought I'm gonna be a Navy SEAL, and then I watch, Indiana Jones, and I want to be an archaeologist, and then I watch, and so like I started starting to realize that no, I wanted to be a part of fabricating these worlds, these experiences, these films, and that's when I kind of decided I wanted to go into movie making. It was really this, I don't know if you're maybe too young to remember, but early on, maybe in the 90s. Maybe even in the 80s, but probably early 90s, there was on the Discovery Channel, which wasn't the channel that it is today, there was this series called Movie Magic. And they did all this great behind the scenes, filmmaking stuff, which I would love to see today, some kind of a series devoted to that kind of stuff. But anyway, so they would show miniature making and explosives and just starting to kind of show the visual effects side of things of computer CGI stuff. And that was what really locked me into wanting to go to film school to probably be an editor, but try to also be involved with special effects and what was coming, the kind of visual effects world, So that was kind of my background. And then, in high school, I made a lot of shorts, and my first kind of introduction to the CG thing was we had a video toaster, but no one ever used in our school. But my tech teacher, his name was Mr. Thomas, was probably, I have to thank him big time for kind of steering me on this path. But he basically locked me in a room and showed me the box for the video toaster and said, "Don't come out until this thing works." So on that video toaster, which is basically a live switching, kind of hardware box.
Right. That's for Amiga, or is it?
Yeah, it was an Amiga. It was an Amiga 2000, I think. And so yeah, we had that, but it had Lightwave on it, Lightwave 3D, and so that was where I started to kind of first learn the CG side of things. And there was probably around middle school, maybe early high school, Lightwave was going to go I guess solo. I guess they were going to not be bundled with this Amiga anymore, which is also made my new tech. And they were just going to have a separate CG application. And that was right around the same time that FireWire was starting to happen, and then digital video was really starting to kind of emerge. And so I made my first in high school kind of like video short with visual effects in it. That was, I comped in through, in a super layman terms, layman way, with Lightwave. It was just this floating steel ball that was attacking one of my student kind of colleagues. And it was totally silly, but totally awesome. Yeah, and it was from that early on, I decided I was going to go to the Florida State Film School. And that was a film school where I grew up in Florida. And yeah, and eventually I got into school. I didn't get accepted my first year, but I moved up there anyway, and just started volunteering on film sets. You know what I mean? Started learning grip and electric, and just being basically the coffee boy essentially. And the next year I actually got into the film school, and that was where my whole world kind of exploded. I learned film, learned, because the way the school was structured at the time, I learned sound, editing, even acting, shooting, of course, all that kind of stuff. And I guess I had an innate desire to direct, but it really didn't blossom until this one night. There was 30 people in our class. And in that class, by the way, was Barry Jenkins, a filmmaker that a lot of people know, my buddy T.S. Nolan, who's a screenwriter, a lot of really fantastic friends that I still have to this day. And we all went out and were given a little Bolex camera, a wind-up Bolex World War II camera with 8mm reversal film. So it's like super primitive essentially. And they just said, here's the weekend, here's 400 feet of film, or I think it might have been 200 feet of film, which is probably about 8 or 9 minutes or something. And they said, go out and make a film. And so we all came back the next week, and we all in one night watched each other's films in the screening room, essentially the theater room at the film school. And I made something that was totally ridiculous. It was a spoof on The Matrix, but done because we couldn't record sound. It was just a Bolex camera. I did it in a basically silent film approach, where I would because there was no editing, by the way. We weren't even editing. We were editing in camera.
We're shooting for the edit.
Exactly, and that is such a valuable lesson to learn that I don't think people really appreciate today, obviously because of the technology we have. But I would shoot this crazy, Matrix. It was called The Metrics, which is stupid silly, but I printed out all these printouts, hung them on the wall while we're out on location. I went to the Capitol building, which you couldn't do today, and we just shot this stupid film, and I would shoot a shot, and I would run over, and I would shoot the still frame, whoa, I would say whoa, but it'd be printed out, and I would just go back and forth and do this thing. It was totally stupid. I even did like bullet time by just clicking the camera running and walking around the guy, and it kind of works, and it's clues you way, and the reaction though in the audience was crazy, and it was like, play it again. Everyone's clapping, having a great time with it, and that was what gave me the bug, man, to be kind of a part of bringing these things to be experienced by an audience. That was where I decided I wanted to direct. So.
That's so awesome. Do you think also just having done all the other areas, it kind of built that foundation for you where perhaps maybe it's not going to click as much about, hey, I want to direct, but once you see all the bits and pieces, that allows you, essentially now it's like, I can see what I would be directing. You're not thinking so much about the cinematography, you're looking at every aspect. Do you think that kind of gave you some strength, having a better understanding of?
Yeah, I think it's super valuable. I mean, especially as a director, you're kind of a master of none and, jack of all trades, essentially, and so you kind of have to know the language of all the different pieces that make up a movie, because your job is to lead all those different departments towards one goal, towards one light at the end of the tunnel, right? And sometimes you don't even know where the hell you're going. You don't know, it might be a dark room with a little pinpoint of light, and you're just bouncing around in the dark until you find your way to the end. And you have this army behind you of different department heads and thousands of people, and you have to be able to kind of understand their job, their challenges, the necessity of what they're providing towards the end result, to really effectively be a good director, I think, Now every director has their own kind of like strengths, some are kind of actor based, some are kind of, visual based, and some are, something else, more artistic or abstract or something. But yeah, I think it's a super valuable thing to understand, it is, movie making in general is such a, strange art form. It is the only art form that combines these standalone art forms. You've got performance of theater and stage. You've got sound. You've got the photography. All these elements that come into play. To make a wholly original, I think, unique thing. Especially for the theatrical experiences, which is what I kind of really gravitate towards. Is that sit in a room with 200, 300 strangers and enjoy something up on the screen and submit to it. It's a different experience than it, especially us having been at home now for a year, right? Mm-hmm. I think we all kind of would probably acknowledge that the experience of watching something at home, for the most part, is there's an intimacy to it in a way because you're in their living room, but there's also, we all kind of watch stuff and then, also kind of check our phones, and, we don't really submit to it in a way, unless it's like something that we're all looking forward to, like the next Game of Thrones or something, Yeah. But the theater experience is something just truly unique where, there's something about the environment that makes you sit down and you just vicariously live in that that screen projected in front of you. You know, it's a magical experience, you know? So yeah, I mean, it's a long way, I guess, of answering your question, but yeah,
good.
understanding all the different kind of, you know, factors that go into making these things that are, I think, you know, one part magic and one part, you know, effort, you know, it's definitely really important.
I love that. And just to jump back again for a second about you going to film school and first not getting accepted in, I think it's just worthwhile mentioning that, because again, I feel like a lot of people, they tend to hand that permission of, you know, knighting someone as a filmmaker or whatever creative, like whatever ambitions they have. They're like, okay, I want to do this. And someone says no. They're like, okay. And they go off and do something else. So I always love the perseverance that a lot of people have, who are usually the ones who make it, when they pivot. When someone says no, it's like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to keep doing other stuff while I look for my second try. So for you, still showing up, like, what was that mentality?
Yeah. So like, you know, a lot of times when I tell people if they want to direct, I tell them, don't do it. Don't do it. It's an awful job. It's terrible. It's really hard. It sucks your life away. And if you don't do it because of what I say, then you're probably not a director. At some level, you know, at least on the directing front of things. But I think it definitely applies across kind of industries, or at least the different departments of movie making in general. You have to have a kind of, I don't know, sensibility that just, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to ask for permission. You know what I mean? I'm going to do it. You can't tell me no, I'm going to do it. Now it's a little different when you have a boss and they're telling you, you know, whatever, that's something else. But there is a thing, especially with my experience in film school, I was dying to get in that film school, you know, and it's a very, very selective school. It takes 15 transfers a year and 15 freshmen. So I applied as a freshman, and they get thousands of submissions every year, you know, so I didn't get in. So, it was crushing, of course, but I said, screw it, I'm going to go to Florida State anyway. And, you know, I want to be a part of this stuff. So I'm just going to, you know, take some classes on the side that I had to kind of get through and just try to wiggle my way in, you know, to the film school just by meeting students. And I got to say, that was like an incredibly rewarding experience, just being a volunteer. Mm-hmm. Not to say anything negative or sound like kind of an asshole, but, you know, you could see from the sidelines what people were doing wrong, mm-hmm. the mistakes they were making. And I could just keep my head down. I could push those carts and push those sandbags and also just be a part of learning the rhythms of set. You know, live action filmmaking is a very peculiar thing for someone who's never seen it before, you know? And yeah, it was an incredibly valuable experience to kind of come in that way, where I didn't have to kind of participate in the curriculum, essentially, of film school. I got to just be a volunteer and help. That was like really, really crucial for me, I think. And I met some really good buddies. My buddy Dan, you know, like he and I were like these grips on the sideline, just muttering to each other, you know, like, oh, we would do this, or if I got in, I'd do this, you know. And so he and I both, I'm sure it helped a bit, but we got to know some of the faculty and a lot of the students, and, you know, and we worked hard. We worked really hard. And, you know, you get some letters from these people, and I'm sure it had some effect to getting in the next year when I applied as a transfer. And yeah, it was crucial, man. It was really, really crucial.
Looking back at where you are now and looking back all the way to there, like, how critical do you think it is to build relationships and kind of rely on relationships more?
Oh yeah, it's everything. Yeah, this town runs on relationships, you know, like almost all the business that I've done since, you know, out of film school, all those friends, you know, like I said, you know, Barry, my buddy Brandon, Dan, you know, TS, there's a lot of really talented people that came out of our school, and I know those guys. Like, we all kind of went through something together. It's such a small school experience that we all kind of felt like we were in like kind of like a clubhouse, I guess. You know, it's crucial because especially when you're moving out, say in our case, we're starting in Florida, you know, where there is no movie industry really, and coming out to Los Angeles, it's a scary thing. Now you have to do that when you're young and naive, and you're willing to kind of starve a little bit. But it's so great to have that kind of support structure around you of like friends that you call, hey, did you find a place to live, or where are you going? But all this kind of stuff. That was like really, really, in hindsight, I probably even underappreciated, you know? But even beyond that, the town, the business runs on relationships. I mean, almost all the work that I've done since my little short film that I made, Work in Progress, which was my last thesis film out of film school, was kind of my first animation attempt. It won a bunch of awards and came out here and opened up a bunch of doors. that took 10 years for me to ultimately become a director. But a lot of those people that I first met, having watched that short and told me, hey, you got some talent, kid, like what else you got? It didn't work out right away, but those people, when I made my next short, Ruin, like 10 years later, those same people were there and I was talking to them again. There was kind of a relationship already, right? And then moving beyond that, my relationship with the studio at Fox in particular with Maze Runner, and they're the ones who sort of brought me in based off Ruin. And while we're talking about making Ruin as a feature, they also gave me this little book called Maze Runner and said, take this home, read it, and tell us what you would do with it. We haven't been able to crack it, So those people, those same people, have either stayed at Fox, but of course Fox now is kind of disbanded in a way since the Disney merger. But the guy that brought me in, Steve Asbell, who was an executive, who brought me in and said, I love your short, Ruin, and we should talk. He's now running Fox, and he's my boss on Planet of the Apes. Now, my boss who gave me the job for Maze Runner is Emma Watts. She's running Paramount. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. A lot of the friends that I made at Fox 10 years ago, or whatever, how long it was ago, are now at Universal and Sony and all these different places. So all those relationships now, when I have a project and I think something's right, I can call those people up and say, hey, I got something for you. I think you're going to like it. And that means something because we have a relationship, So relationships are, I think, they're underappreciated, even by people who appreciate them. You know what I mean? Like they are kind of everything.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting too that like a lot of people will look at very two-dimensionally, like, okay, well, I got to get in with that person and that person because of where they are, and kind of neglecting the fact that wherever you are in your career, the people that you befriend now, a lot of those are going to have their own trajectory of where they're going to head off to. And I've got so many friends, kind of like what you were saying about Florida. Like I grew up in Australia, we all knew we'd end up somewhere or other eventually, and a lot of them now looking the same thing, like they're directing features in LA as well, and just kind of seeing, like, looking back at where we were as little kids and doing things on the side for fun, like you never know where those other people are going to end up, rather than just targeting the people who are where you want them to be eventually.
And not only that, dude, but a big part of it is to be a nice person.
I know, funny.
Talent is important. Talent is very important. But even now, the more that I've done this, I value the personal kind of rapport with someone more than the talent, because movie making is really hard, and that goes all the way down from my job as a director all the way down to visual effects artist. Okay, it is really difficult, long hours, and I think for a lot of us, I think it's an obsession, and to have to do that next to someone who's a jerk, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. And so, being a good person goes a long way, about getting it. Once you get your foot in that door, and you are also nice to work with, but also that doesn't mean being a pushover. You can still have an opinion. So there's a way of doing that. I'm a team player. I'm a collaborator. I want to help make this thing better. I'm coming at it from a good place, not a negative place. All these things, it's super important, because when someone needs some help or a job in 6 months, they're going to think of you, because when we were in the dark, dungeon together, there was something there, so like, again, all that stuff with the relationships and sort of how you project yourself professionally, I think is, it's crucial.
Yeah. Make sure that someone you can actually have a drink with after work when you're stressed a lot.
Yeah. Even if you're odd and weird, whatever, it's fine. It's just I don't need a negative kind of energy, on set in general. So, we've had issues like that where we had to kind of let people go just because, it's just that little thing just poisons the rest of it. You know what I mean?
I think it's so critical. No, I love that. And just kind of moving around a little bit, like, again, whether it is the metrics or whether it is Jacob or work in progress, like, obviously you've created a few short films over time. And do you feel like each one of them was a stepping stone to the next one to kind of land those bigger goals?
I think so, yeah. For early on, film school is really important because it's the one time where you can fail without consequences. So I've always been pretty ambitious with, I like being on the cutting edge of my abilities, I guess, and each movie that gets harder and harder. So like the first thing was I was going to do one visual effect shot. There was going to be one shot in there. The second one was going to be way more. And the third one was going to be a full CG animation. I like kind of pushing the challenge of that, of being on the edge of like, I don't know how to do this, because you learn so much. And I just have a kind of philosophy of, you shoot for the stars you're never going to get there, no matter what. No project I've ever been a part of that is like, oh, this went exactly how I planned. It came out exactly how I wanted. It is all compromise, on all fronts, right? So you never quite get there. But if you're shooting all the way up there, you get halfway there, you're farther along than if you just kind of went to that halfway spot and got kind of quarter way there. So like, I've always been that kind of, that sensibility of just wanting to kind of be on the edge, of, especially technologically, I guess, but also in terms of narrative and storytelling. That's, different types of stories are just more challenging than others, that kind of thing. Push yourself with each project, you know what I mean? And so I think looking back, I probably certainly did that. I mean, I honestly can look back on Ruin now, which is 8 or 9 years ago now, and I'm like, whoa, I can't believe I did that. Like, frankly, it's like, that was a case where like naivete and just being kind of a young, hungry person, I didn't know any better. and I kind of, and I still look back on it and say that was kind of impressive and ambitious, still. So yeah, I think that's important stuff, or at least for me it is,
So I'd love to talk about Ruin, just because, again, like, obviously that's a catalyst in a lot of ways to...
Definitely. It was absolutely kind of the thing that sort of opened up the doors big time.
At the same time, like, as you mentioned with naivete, like, do you feel like in some ways it's very easy to talk yourself, not necessarily you, but other people you might witness as well, like, talk yourself out of doing something because it's too ambitious, such as looking back now being like, whoa, like, that is a lot of work and maybe I didn't realize it at the time. But do you feel like some other people might suffer from that, where they're at the brink of doing something great, and then they're like, okay, imposter syndrome, I'm going to curl up.
Yeah, no, it's a shame. I think, I'm sure a lot of artists, I'm sure I do, suffer from that whole imposter syndrome thing. I don't deserve this. I don't belong here. I'm not that good, all that kind of stuff. Especially after you had a couple of reviews, it makes you kind of question yourself. So, you have to develop a thick skin for sure in this kind of world. And, yeah, it's a good question. When I made the Ruin thing, for instance, that really ambitious thing, I knew enough to be dangerous. I didn't have a lot of people around me telling me, no, don't do that. You're gonna crash and burn, and then what? So like, I didn't really have that doomsday thing staring at me, the potential. So that was kind of a benefit for me. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky thing, man. This is gonna sound a little lame, but it was after I made the first Maze Runner movie. I had the privilege to I was going to London for some publicity stuff, right? Which was kind of fun. And I got this call from producer David Heyman. And David Heyman is the guy behind Harry Potter movies, Gravity, Paddington Bear. He's a really, really good producer. And he just wanted to meet. He's like, I saw your movie before a lot of other people had, because he was a part of this whole complicated thing of a financing kind of thing. And he just said, dude, first movie, this is great. He just wanted to talk and meet. And I started telling him about what was next and all this great stuff, and should I do the next movie and all this crazy stuff. And he just had these 2 words that seem so simple, but have stuck with me for now, whatever it's been, 5 or 6 years. And he just said, Wes, be brave. And that, I tell you, has stuck with me for so long that it's a simple thing, but it is hard to do. It is very hard to do when you have, they're going to hate it. Everyone on Twitter is telling me this is terrible, whatever it is. It's like, you just got to be brave. And you have to know inside if, like, I have to make this, I want to make this. And, I think you just do it. And, you're going to burn, you're going to crash, you're going to burn, you're going to succeed. It's all part of the process. You know what I mean? So you got to be open to that stuff. And, the last little bit of wisdom that I had from one of my faculty members at the film school, his name was Andy Rubin. He said, when we left, you're going to have 10 failures for every success. So make sure you get those 10 failures out of the way as quick as possible. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so just do it. Know that you're going to fail. Don't assume you're going to fail, of course, but just know, like, hey, that's part of the plan. I'm going to make this thing and it's not going to work out. I'm going to be on to the next one. I'm not going to sit there and tinker with it forever, making it perfect and get lost in that for 2 or 3 years. I'm going to go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I swear to God, it will happen. Whatever it is that your goal is out of that works for basically for shots, for movie making, for script writing on all fronts. There's something about the movie gods in general. They'll shine down on you, and it will happen. On that 10th one or whatever, somewhere on the way there, you'll get your success. You know what I mean? So you just gotta plow forward,
I think a lot of people might say, well, it's easy to say that, like, just ignore the failure and focus on the wins. But I'm just curious for you, like, how do you see failure? in terms of, for me, I see failure as just part of the process. Is not failure. It's just course correct, right? And it's kind of like what you were saying earlier, that you're not going to have like a perfect plan that you're just ticking off the boxes. It's more of a general direction, and that means that as one thing doesn't work, it just pongs you in the correct direction until you do eventually get there. It's like, what's your perception of that? And to make it a bit more tricky, like, also, what's your perception of perfectionism as well?
Perfectionism is a tricky thing. I struggle with it, especially, I think it comes from a visual effects sort of background where we are so used to pixel-effing everything. It can paralyze you though, right? And that's a tricky thing. Now, I'm not sure are you talking in context of visual effects? Are you talking about in context of, say, directing or movie making, that kind of thing?
As you said, I think it applies to everything. And that's why I feel like you kind of hinted at both of these already. And that's why I kind of wanted to touch base, because I do think that people tend to look at failure as like, oh, it's easy to fail and get back up.
It can be debilitating, yes.
Yeah, but me personally, I don't see it as getting back up. That's the problem in the first place, is the fact that a lot of people do find it debilitating. And I think that is more of a state of mind of how you interpret a failure versus it's data. Like, okay, that didn't work. Great, let me try something else over here.
Yeah, totally. And the truth is, like, yeah, it hurts. It's something that you do something and like it doesn't get the response you want, or people say it sucks or whatever the hell it is. It hurts. It doesn't feel good. Acknowledge that and then move on. Is the idea here. Like, to have your time of grief, but then find the next thing to jump into and take what you learned from that experience and apply it. A lot of times it doesn't apply, by the way. A lot of times you'll take what you thought you learned, and it doesn't apply to the next thing. That's the kind of the fun thing about movie making in general, is that, especially even visual effects shots, like, experience becomes a great kind of like backpack to wear, but if it's not like a tool for every job. The movie making is like every project has its own unique, weird things that you have to solve, and that's part of the fun of, I think, the business in general. But it is tricky though. I struggle with it myself sometimes, of like, what lessons do you learn, and sort of, you have to be careful to not learn the wrong lessons too. You know what I mean? Because we are in a business, especially as a director, a lot of times you are the guy to make the choice, so to be in that place where you're starting to doubt yourself or question yourself, or like, whoa, but last time this feels right, but I don't know, like, it's like you can spiral out of control really quickly, you know what I mean? And just and be indecisive, which is the death of movie making, that kind of stuff can just kill you. So, I don't know, it's something that everyone's got to navigate in their own kind of way. But I guess the biggest thing is just, it's natural to feel bad and to feel hurt, but move on. And if you love doing this thing, you find the next thing to do and find the next mountain to climb, and that's for me, the fun is the climb. It's really fun to kind of show it to an audience, but for the most part, I can't watch my movies with an audience. It's really hard to do that kind of thing. I'm my worst critic, so I just oh God, what was I thinking? No, I love the experience on the way up. That is so fun. That was like, a really good example of that is the mouse guard thing. The mouse guard thing, we got shut down, after, about 2 weeks away from filming, essentially. But it was a year and a half of designing, every blade of grass of a fantastic world, and inventing new kind of techniques and working on pipelines, and just like, it was a blast. It was so fun. So, I actually got a lot out of the experience, even though there wasn't kind of an end result at the end. But
I love that. What do you find is typically your creative process that you tend to rely on?
It's almost always music and visual. For me, even in visual effects shots, you have a kind of sense of, it's a dark shot with like a really spot point light, whatever it is, it's very foggy or whatever it is, right? It's like there's a mood, there's an aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
And that goes the same way for me on the project front. I typically, and now all my bosses at the studios know that I like to write in visuals. I have a lot of concept art friends, and I sort of am a concept artist myself. To a very small degree compared to the friends that I have. And so it's a way that I can get lost in an image, and my brain starts firing, and like that, this one little piece of of a, you know, like up in there or whatever it is. You know, it's like I can sit there and imagine a whole scene that takes place on that thing and what if and that, and it kind of triggers this avalanche of potential possibilities, whatever it is, right? So the visual thing is really, really crucial for me. And then music is really, really crucial for a feeling. You know, that's where the emotion I usually find. You know, with exception, I have another project in particular where a particular character story kind of popped in mind first, which is odd for me. I knew I wanted to do something with Don Quixote, the character of Don Quixote, but reimagine him in something else. But with that idea, it's a story of a tragic kind of figure, an elderly figure who snaps and imagines the world he wish the reality he wishes he had. That's a fantastic story, and I just wanted to do something, so I've set that in like a different kind of world for a different project. But even there, it's a visual thing that is kind of at its component for that idea. So yeah, for me, that's what I do. I listen to a lot of soundtracks since I was about, when did Jurassic Park come out? Was it 91? 93. Since I was 13 years old, the very first CD, compact disc that I ever bought was the soundtrack to Jurassic Park.
That's awesome.
And that set me on the path towards just listening to soundtracks constantly. And soundtracks are great, man. You know, they can be listened, you know, especially, you know, even Jurassic Park for me, I can listen to that thing. I spent a lot of time with those headphones on out in the woods around my house, imagining, you know, movie scenes, you know what I mean? And they didn't have anything to do with dinosaurs. So there's something magical about really great soundtrack music, especially John Williams. I mean, come on. You know, there is no one better. He's literally the Mozart of our time. You know what I mean? It helps me kind of find a rhythm, you know, and a kind of tone and a kind of emotion to the visuals that I'm also contemplating. And then from there, I can pretty quickly pitch someone an idea, you know, in a story and an approach that gets them excited or whatever the hell it is. And then we go off and move to the script stage and finding a writer who knows how to, which I do not have that ability to convert inspiration into text. I'm much better at, you know, sometimes taking text to, you know, the end result, you know? So, yeah.
Do you find during editorials, well, even if it's just placeholder scores, like that's really critical while you're trying to piece together?
Yeah. I'm probably a wannabe editor. You know, like I said, when I went to film school, I thought I was going to be an editor. You know, I thought that's where I would go. So, and I think it has to do with the perfectionist thing. That's where I am probably my worst self as a perfectionist in the editing room. I mean, we're talking like, take 2 frames off. Okay, that's good. Now just 1 more frame. Okay, come back. Let's go back to that. Put it back to 10 more frames. Let's do this again. You know, I will be just ruthless. And my poor editor, Dan Zimmerman, who's done all my movies with me, he is incredibly gracious and patient with me, you know. And, you know, it doesn't, not to say that we don't, you know, he doesn't kind of suggest and I listen and take on ideas, but like I really obsess over the construction of this shot, then this shot, and now go into this shot and all that kind of stuff and making that flow perfectly. And then, you know, on top of that, making the sound come in pre-lap just right so it kind of covers over that cut, you know, and the music when it comes in. Sometimes, again, you can go a little too crazy, you can get lost in it. The biggest challenge is staying objective. You know, it's like you lose the trees from the forest, all that kind of stuff. That's just a really hard challenge to do, I think, probably for any kind of, you know, movie maker. It's such a fingerprint of my movies for me is how they're kind of constructed, you know, even if I make a mistake, you know, along the way and look back on it and regret, you know.
Yeah, it's such a huge process. I mean, I'd love to talk a little bit about just your first feature, just because I think, to me, I can only imagine how overwhelming that is to having the big picture, 30,000 foot view of all the moving parts. Like, what were some of the biggest takeaways for you having that being your first film, going in and maybe having a few ahas about, you know, either the process or different ways to work with people? Like, what were some of the things you took away?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, yeah, I have to say, like, it was a pretty smooth process for me. Part of that came from film school. The FSU Film School was they heavily focused on production. You know, so we learned, you know, the rhythms of set and the different kind of department heads, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I was already kind of aware of how a set worked, essentially. So that, I didn't realize it, of course, at the time, but that became quite a comfortable glove to slip back on, you know. Now, granted, it's way bigger, you know, it's a much bigger kind of operation. We have like, you know, 15 trucks lined up outside the field that I just picked randomly, you know, and they're all getting stuck in the mud because I didn't think about it, you know, that kind of silly stuff, you know. But it was a small movie. It was the first Maze Runner movie was like it was 8 weeks to shoot it. You know what I mean? It was a $30 million movie, which is like a production. It was a cost of like a romantic comedy for a lot of things. So it wasn't like too overwhelming in terms of its scale and scope. I think we were very ambitious, and a lot of the visual effects was what gave us a lot of our ambition. I think there, the visual aspects of it all, and creating a world when you don't have a lot of money to do it. And that was I was pretty comfortable with, because I was already kind of a wannabe visual effects artist. I knew enough to be dangerous, to kind of like avoid things, to like, oh, hey, guys, their hair kind of went off the blue screen there. I know we could roto, but I don't want to deal with it. Let's just shoot it again real quick. And this time we'll just adjust the camera. Like I can just help that process a bit. Because that movie in particular, it was like, we were pinching every penny, man. It was like, you can afford 8 grievers in this sequence, 8 griever shots. That's the way it works. So it's like, okay, I got to think about how I'm going to shoot this. And that was fun. I'm really good at that side of things, of like the problem solving side of things. And, I think the other big reason that it went so smoothly is the team around me, frankly. They did, Fox was really, really good in bringing in the people that were not, that let me do my thing, and they saw the inspiration I had, and I hate this word, they saw the vision I had. I hate that word, but it is kind of the only thing I can think of. They trusted me, and they just knew that this first timer just needs some support around him to help him accomplish those things. So I had a great AD. I had a producer that came on. I had 2 producers. One was Joe Hartwick, who would become my producing partner after on all the rest of the movies. We have a company together now. And then Whit Godfrey, who was a producer on giant movies like Twilight and all those other giant movies. And he was like kind of a Southern boy like me. We got along great, and he went off and ran Paramount for a couple of years. So it's like, again, back to the relationship thing, right? And so, he was a fantastic dude, and another guy that just said, look, dude, I think you got this wrong here. Or, and I would just say, I don't know. I've thought about it. I went home, I come back the next day, I think you're wrong. And he's like, okay, fine. He'll that's the kind of team members that you need, right? Who will trust they'll trust you. But with that comes, they trust that you'll listen to, and you won't just be an egotistical prick that just thinks you're right all the time, right? That's a really important thing. I had a great DP, right? I had to go select the DP. It was first time working with that. Turned out really great. His name is Enrique Chediak, who's really fantastic, and just had a kind of style that just kind of fit, I think, what I gravitate towards, which is, it's a weird thing, I think, my sensibility. It's like I have these sensibilities of an indie approach to things, but I love giant, huge blockbusters. And so it's a weird kind of thing. And, and I think I've carried that through on everything we've done so far. But yeah, the experience was, it was incredibly rewarding. And I'll tell you what, the big thing that I did not appreciate at the time was casting. Someone said it once, 90% of the director's job is casting. You know what I mean? And we had a fantastic casting director, Denise Chamian, I've worked with in all my movies. And we just helped kind of select, I think, a stellar cast that I could lean on too, and trust that they would deliver something fantastic and it would work, because I think those movies, for the most part, they work because of the actors and the characters. That's really their appeal to the audience, the fans who love those movies, and I try to bring it, an element of sort of, it's like a YA franchise, even though I hate that word, but I tried to make it very much not like a YA movie, you know what I mean? And so while it's kind of focuses on the YA thing, I try to kind of give people access into it from a different point of view as well, So the casting thing was like a real discovery for me, like especially there's just one scene where we were shooting it, and I was just like, there's no visual effects, there's no stunts, there's nothing spectacle about it whatsoever. It was just this little scene where 2 characters are talking to each other, you know what I mean? In this cool little world. And I fell in love with it. I had such a good time with just watching these actors, giving them what they needed to like make it come alive. And that was like a real discovery for me, So now I've got this itch to do a really great little character movie, a little character drama piece where it's just really flexing those muscles in terms of like just, empathy and, just a strong narrative, So that was a cool surprise for me. Was that side of things, and then, and then sound always is the thing that blows my mind.
so underrated. You know,
So underrated. It is more than 50% of the experience for sure. And on top of that, music, people don't appreciate it. It's like a thing. It's like someone tells me they want to watch my movie on my phone, on their phone. I say, fine, but you have to use good headphones.
Right.
Fine. So sound is probably one of the biggest things that people could do in their own kind of productions. Sound is usually the giveaway of amateur, right? Good mics, good sound, good mix. That goes a long way for any money you would spend compared to any money you would spend on like visual effects or camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and you take it for granted now, especially on the visual side, it's a lot easier and more approachable now to get the visuals. But
yeah, we pretty much crossed the threshold of like, if you imagine it, you can do it.
Yeah, music and sound, like without those, you're lost. Bad sound makes you not want to pay attention to the film, or you can't.
Yeah, it can push you away or pull you in. And it can make something feel real that doesn't look it. You know what I mean? It's super, super, super crucial. That's why I'm here giving you this great mic.
Two of my friends, the Spierig brothers, they directed Daybreakers, and then I think they did one of the Saw sequels, Jigsaw. And
nice.
They came from doing more like After Effects 2D effect stuff.
That was my realm. Yeah. And I was a huge After Effects guy. I was the one I told everyone, you do anything with After Effects,
That's it. It's so beneficial to have that knowledge, at least to know what you can do after the fact. Because, I work on set, but I'm not directing. I've only directed a few small commercials, things like that. But
that's cool.
It's
let me ask you, do you have the ambition to direct?
I've been mixed, because it's one of those conversations where it seems like these days it's really odd, but like, in the last 5 years, a lot of my friends have now started to direct a lot of feature films. So I think we've got a few mutual friends like Jeff Fowler, and Dave Wilson.
Oh yeah,
shot a bunch of Explorer guys. But just in general, like it seems like more and more of my friends are kind of moving into that realm where I'm very mixed. I've produced a lot of shows, which for me, it's really odd. I kind of gravitate towards producing.
It's just as crucial as the thing about directing is like, yeah, you get all the I guess accolades or whatever, but you also get all the blame, So it's not like it's a particular job, but like I can't do it without a good producer. I can't do it without a good DP, without a good visual effects team. Like I need people who want to do that and do it as best as they can, because I'm trying to also do my thing as best as I can.
I think at the same time, like I can't imagine the pressure, like because everything's time. Like when you're on set, like the minute you go on set, everything's costing money, and on top of that, every decision needs to be the right one. So
yeah, you're spending, whatever it was, like $200,000 a day, and I'm spending, whatever it is, how many millions a week, and I'm behind, it's not good, but at the same time, I don't know, I'm pretty good at just pushing that away. I'm not sure how, but you just let it roll off your shoulders and go, and get what you got to get done, the sun's going down, let's shoot, put up a light, it's that kind of thing,
Yeah, I think that's the whole point. Like
the biggest pressure, honestly, now is delivering on the promise for fans, because like in my case, my first 3 movies were these big kind of fan movies. There was a lot of expectation from the audience of what those movies should be and should include. At the same time, I have things that I want to do that I don't, that I think that's probably the biggest pressure is that, and then wanting to be successful for the studio to make sure that it makes money for the studio. That is like, our business doesn't work unless I don't get to do more movies unless they make money for the studio.
Right,
so that's probably my biggest pressure that I feel. But on set, I don't know. You kind of roll with it,
One thing I was going to say about Spierig is because we did Daybreakers, which the budget for that was their first. Yeah, it was their first.
Yeah.
Feature. And we did that for $20 million at the time.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, we definitely stretched it a lot. And what I found interesting though was that eventually the budget did run out, and they ended up doing, I think it was 468 visual effects shots themselves, which are obviously a lot of green screen removal, things
right,
like that.
Sure. I did some of those on every one of my movies. I've done one shot.
Right. But I've always been fascinated by that. I mean, just the fact that like if you have some understanding of visual effects, being able to give legs to anything you're doing, does that give you more confidence on set, knowing like if we don't get it in the frame, then we can always come back later on and see what we can do to the shot, rather than it being this magical process that some filmmakers don't understand?
Yeah, I mean, it's for sure. I mean, things have changed for me a bit because my last experience was, basically a fully CG movie. So there is no, I can always come back and reshoot that thing or whatever it is, right? So there was a little safety net there. I have never done reshoots. I've never, our movies weren't expensive enough to kind of, warrant, as much as I wanted to do them, reshoot things. It was like, nah, it's fine, it's good enough, let's just move on. We're not going to spend $1 million putting together a crew to go reshoot something, with an actor we can't get the schedule right, So I've never been in that place where I have to reshoot, but I guess when I'm on set, I guess I am somewhat, I will protect myself sometimes, knowing that, if I just give me one little shot here, just in case I need it, I know I can put that in or do whatever it is, whether it's a visual effects thing or just an editing thing. I guess I do some of that. At the same time, Planet of the Apes now, it's a different league, it's a different world. I will do reshoots with that, I'm sure. It's also a completely, cutting edge, visual effects movie, so I can iterate and change and do all that stuff to my heart's content as long as I have the time and money to do it. You know what I mean? Because like one little change can affect lots of ripple effects. So I don't know. It's a tricky thing in terms of like me now. When I was doing my first little movie 7 years ago, I could do a little After Effects shot or two. I don't think I can do any ape shots. You know what I mean? Like they're on a different league than what I was doing. So I'm much more on kind of the level of trust, and it's just let's develop a system, a workflow together that I think is a little different than what you're used to, but I think is going to make us all a lot more comfortable because what I found like on the mouse guard experience was because I can get on the computer. Because I can sit there and run the controls, and I don't need like all the artifice of like a fake camera with a fake kind of jib arm and all that kind of stuff. I can just set my keyframes and I can just set my thing and just do it. I just I don't want to say it's in a negative way, but I just cut out 5 or 6 different steps of game of telephone to the end result. That's a huge thing. That's a very big thing because my big thing is on our company is that we like to punch above our weight class. We like to do more with less. Not in a negative way, but just less unwieldy machine, I think yields just a stronger result. And we're all you're not just working on the eyelashes over there, you're actually doing the whole shot. What it is, what I mean? But I'm gonna help you and make sure it's not a shot you're gonna waste time on. You're not gonna work on that shot for 3 months, I'm gonna cut it. I'm gonna be sure, you know what I mean? It's that kind of efficiencies that I'm interested in movie making right now because I think movies are just cost too damn much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, one of my friends, Mark Toya, he just directed Monsters of Man that came out in December. The reason I bring that up is because I was really blown away by the fact that he decided to self-finance the film. And he shot in Cambodia, got less A-list actors, but it meant that he had more of a flexible schedule, which meant that he was able to shoot in sequence.
It's freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
And that comes at a different kind of cost.
That kind of fascinated me is the fact that some people are at that point where it's like, hey, what if we kind of opted for a smaller budget, but took more ownership of it rather than it being more the big corporate machine. But I love the fact that that is an opportunity now where you can say, hey, I'll drop a couple $1 million of my own. We'll do it for a heck of a lot cheaper because we are able to cut out a lot of the typical, network of people that would be involved.
Hey, that's what George Lucas did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No one could make those prequel movies at the price he did. No one.
Right.
Only he could have done that. You know what I mean? Same thing with the other Star Wars movies. I mean, he spent a lot of his own money, and the risk is huge, and the reward is huge. You know what I mean? Right. So, yeah, man, it is exciting, and like, the whole thing is like for the last decade, we've seen the access straight to the viewer is there. You know what I mean? But now it's just to the point, like for me right now, it's like the movies that we're kind of involved in I don't have $200 million to, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like it's a different kind of like realm to be in. But, I do think about it a lot, like being inspired by what George Lucas did and what he created, what he started. That was like a guy who was truly an indie filmmaker, that became one of the biggest, blockbuster makers ever. I love that. Like, Skywalker Ranch, which is what this hat is, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. Now, no one can do that now. It's just that's already that's frontier that's been claimed, so it's not going to happen that way. Now it's probably going to be in BitTorrent or something, or crypto, it's probably where that'll happen, NFTs. Like I said, if you got that ambition to do it, if anyone can stop you from doing it, then it probably tells you shouldn't have done it. You know what I mean?
I was curious about you starting Oddball and like how that now plays into, everything you're doing with upcoming projects, whether that's now a good place to kind of do pre-production and more plot out a lot of what you're doing and everything else too. But also you've got your announcement with Paramount and how that ties into everything as well. I'd love to pick your brain about Apes, but obviously that's, I'm sure, in early development.
I'll just say Apes is going to be freaking amazing. I'll tell you this about Apes. I'm not going to tell you anything about it, but I was after Mouse Guard got canceled, right? And, everyone was very apologetic about it. It didn't work out, right? They didn't have the desire to make it. But then they kind of took me aside and said, what would you do with Planet of the Apes? Because I just now spent 2 years with Matt Reeves on Mouse Guard. He was a producer on Mouse Guard, right? So, we were doing it all motion capture. I was working with Weta, all that kind of stuff. So all the pieces were there already, right? At first, I was like, I don't think so. I don't know that's a good idea, guys, and because that last trilogy was fantastic. It's probably one of the greatest trilogies we've had in recent memory that I can think of. There's Lord of the Rings, of course, but it's just incredibly well done movies, right? Where do you go from there? You know what I mean? And so there was a moment, probably a week or two later after I was thinking about it, where I kind of found my way in, essentially. Without giving it away, I was not interested in doing a part 4, right? But at the same time, I did not want to lose what came before. So we found, I think, a really great take on it that allows us to stay in the kind of Caesar universe, but also carve our own track, and I think to open the movie up in a huge way that's going to be, I think, a freaking kick-ass movie. That's going to be awesome. We're going to push things on the technological front, on the world front, on just the tone front of things. But at the same time, it still belongs to the legacy that came before us. And I say that all the way to the very first Planet of the Apes movie, because the Charlton Heston movie, oddly, it was, came out in the 60s, right? Late 60s. I don't know why, but I grew up watching that thing. It was probably on VHS. I don't know why, but I loved that movie. So I've had, a connection to this franchise for a long time. And, and when I said, I think I got it, and I came in and told them what I was kind of thinking about doing, they got it too. They're all cool. We immediately got Josh Friedman to write the script. And we got Rick and Amanda, who are the original writers of the very first of the last trilogy movies and producers for all the rest of the last 3 movies. And so we're already kind of playing in this great space of incredibly talented folks, that have a sense of honor and respect for what this is. But also, like I said, we're gonna open this thing up and I think do what Disney wants and what I certainly want. And I think people are gonna have a good time with it. It's I love world creation, so that's a big part of this.
I think it's so awesome because typically, it's just like anything. Most people want to kind of forget the history and
Yeah, this is not a reboot, but at the same time, like I said, it's not a sequel. So it's this odd little thing, but I think people are gonna freaking love it because it is the natural step for the next probably trilogy of the next chapters of this franchise, which I love dearly. You know what I mean? So we very much not want to screw it up. And I think we've got the people around us to make that happen. So, with any luck, maybe around this summer, we'll start really earnestly in prep. I have had an art team right before the pandemic happened, essentially while it happened. Had a pretty awesome art team put together where we did a tremendous amount of art development that we'll do even more of. Man, I'm super excited about it. And the Oddball thing is, it's kind of interesting because it's kind of the reward you get when you make a successful movie. Like Maze Runner was, it was the studio's most profitable movie that year, right? It was this little tiny movie that made a whole lot of money, and so that was just a chance. So, okay, we're going to start a company, and I did that with my producer buddy, Joe Hartwick. We started this little company together, and it's just basically you're putting a flag in for the studio to say, hey, we want to be in business with you as not just a director, but as someone who wants to feed you content, right? To give you projects and use our brain to kind of develop things for you, right? And so that's what that basically is. It lets me kind of hire, they basically give us some money to basically have an office and hire some people to help read scripts and just, hear ideas and, just that whole kind of machine of development and producing world, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And some of that stuff I direct, some of the stuff I do not, right? I was obviously at the deal. The deal was at Fox because of the Maze Runner stuff and because Emma Watts was there. Since then, Disney has now bought Fox and Emma has now moved to Paramount. And so she said, "You coming over here, boy?" And I said, "But wait a minute, you literally gave me the job for Planet of the Apes at Fox. I will probably be doing this for the next 2 years." She's like, "Fine, it's fine. I just want you over here." And how do I not accept that, right? And so we have a great little deal, a relationship over there where Paramount is in a fantastic place where it's kind of in a complete reawakening in a way. The whole regime has kind of changed and new people have come in, all people that I know, fortunately, from the old Fox days. Jim Giannopoulos is the chairman, Emma Watts, a lot of the executives are coming over from Fox to there. So it feels like Fox already, but they're in this great place where Paramount gets to take swings and create new things, new IP, not just kind of rebooting franchises, and they get to kind of carve their own path. That's going to be fun to be a part of. You know what I mean? That's going to be really fun to help fuel some of that. They have lots of deals, but on our front, we like to do small scale stories on a big canvas, and that's the kind of movies that I grew up on. That's Jurassic Park. That's Star Wars, frankly, right? The first Star Wars. So yeah, it's an exciting time for us while we at the same time, are kind of busy on Planet of the Apes. We've got probably a half dozen, maybe dozen, I think really freaking cool, unique, fresh projects that are in various stages that, we'll see what happens, So
I'm super excited.
Exciting times.
I'm just kind of curious in terms of upcoming technology. I was talking with Mel Studio over in Montreal. They've got the biggest Canadian virtual production soundstage right now, and a lot of other different tech is popping up left and right. I'm curious for you, is there any particular technology when it comes to filmmaking that
real time?
Real time
is everything, man. That for me was the big breakthrough on Mouse Guard, because we built a whole system in Unreal that would feed Weta essentially, right? And that was a challenge to get that all kind of working and stuff. But right as we were about to get that thing, it was like just tightening the thing. It was so good. We had like 3 or 4 people. That was all it took. Could do so much. If anyone saw that trailer that we made, that little sizzle trailer that I kind of leaked out for a while and kind of took down, that was made with a very few people. I lit every one of those shots. Built almost all of those worlds based on Megascans that are now free to use. It's stunning what you can do. The stuff that we were doing was like, this is already better than Saturday morning cartoons, and this is real time. I can sit there and say, okay, here's the shot and here's the light and here, tweak this. Okay, done. Let's call that a day. Send that to Weta. We're done. It's just amazing. It's freaking incredible. And so, yeah, real time for me, I am on this huge real time kick, and I've become real good friends with Epic and those guys. It's just supporting what they're trying to do to also support the kind of, content creation. And this collision that's coming, man, of games, interactive games, and real time kind of storytelling and filmmaking, I think it's going to be a really exciting time. So like any visual effects artists right now in particular, they need to be learning on Unreal, or at least real time stuff in general. It's going to be the future. It's absolutely. You see how fast you see the metahuman stuff. It's not there, but holy crap. It's like, it's amazing. Like, especially like the other demo they did with Unreal 5 coming out, the fact of all these these are all like what the world is going to look like in 5 years is going to be so exciting. And what it's going to do, I think it's going to happen in the series world first, and the TV world first, the streaming, I guess. We're going to be able to do what I just talked about. We're going to be able to do things like go into this, I've got this particular project that is, no one would ever touch it in 1,000 years because it's so weird. It's basically like a Miyazaki thing or Star Wars kind of universe, coupled with like a John Hughes drama story, but it's like in the genre of Tremors. It's freaking bizarre. No one would touch that because it'd be too expensive. The visual world alone that I have is so huge, it's so big and unique, that there was no chance for me to make that. But now, with just a few people, small team, talented guys, can go in and make this thing even in Unreal, or if not, cut a lot of corners in Unreal that ultimately goes to live action. It's just going to open up the potential for all of us to do really cool, new, exciting things where there isn't a huge price tag involved that limits what you can do, right? So I think the world that's going to come in the next couple of years is going to be really exciting, you know?
Yeah, I said Epic on the podcast the other day, actually, and like Teddy, who is running all the Megascan stuff, like, yeah, we go way back, you know, when you're going to capture HDRI and, you know, do all your surveying, measuring, everything else. It's like, why not just capture the entire set physically as well while you're there?
Yeah, we do that already anyway, right? On the big movies, right? You know, Weta, they're on every set, they've scanned that thing to the millimeter, you know? But here's my thing, here's what I like about it. Yeah, sure, they're gonna take all that and that huge, you know, massive data cloud, you know, or data file. I'm not messing with that thing. You know, I can't touch it. They can on their side when they need it to kind of line up sets, and they use it for tracking, all kind of stuff. But exactly, the fact that I can go into Unreal now very quickly. Okay, so now the opportunity there is, hey guys, you know, let's say I want to shoot a movie in New Zealand, you know, and I don't have time to fly 12 hours over there and then 12 hours back. I got other things to do. Go out to this location, looks pretty cool. You know, shoot some photos. We've all seen that before. We do location scouting all the time with photos. That's fine. But you know what? I want to be able to see what my shots can be. I want to play around. Scan this thing like crazy. Send me over into Unreal. I get my cameras lined up. I start looking around. I already have my sets that I've already pre-designed. I drop them in where it might go. And I start, there it is. This is our location, guys. Okay, do the paperwork, start building. Here you go. And that is amazing that we could do something like that. You know what I mean? And use these tools to just efficiency. You know what I mean? Like we're beyond the point now of like, you know, oh my God, I've never seen that before. It just we'll always have, I guess, some element of it, but I'm interested now in using these tools to like just lower the barrier of entry and shrink the team sizes to be, I don't know, just, you know, more potent essentially, you know, because I love it when I can talk to the artists. Yeah. You know, I don't want to like talk to like 5 different games of telephone to someone. I want to be able to go to the artist I know is working on the shot and kind of just explain to him like what I'm thinking, like why I'm not feeling this. And that's going to be a lot more valuable to that person than hearing from 5 different ways, oh, just move the thing to the left.
That's right.
No. Yeah, that's not the note. The note is I'm feeling like the balance is off. That might be thinking, oh, what if I just change the light? Oh, you fully solved it. Great. You know what I mean? Like, how do we get to that place where we can just really effectively communicate using these tools that we're using right now? You know, and all this pandemic has proved the kind of virtual workplace, I think, is totally feasible, you know? So I'm really interested in just that side of things. Whether that happens in the movies or series, I don't know yet, but I want to be on that cutting edge.
You know, like the whole run and gun mentality that is a huge disconnect when it gets into post, and being able to get back to, you know, keeping it light and fast so you can just focus on creativity rather than you know, go to run.
It's really exciting. And like I said, like if you have, you know, experience on these tools, like, you know, Unreal is not that difficult to learn. Frankly, I wish a lot of 3D apps would take some of their cues on how to move around, WASD, all that stuff. It's like a great way to navigate a scene. But, you know, I can really quickly just find my stuff and you know, it's anything you can do as an artist, as a filmmaker, whatever it is, to get that ball down the field as close to the finish line as you can, you know, as quickly as possible. Well, then now you get to spend all your resources and all your time on those last 20 yards or 10 yards, rather than the usual thing of, you know, it's just a endless, awful cycle where you're just every inch, you're just, you know, bumbling your way towards the end there. I'm really interested in that, you know, really quick and dirty, you know, quick, fast, you know what I'm going for, make the choices, you know, learn from the mistakes, and then go in and spend all your time on just the perfection. You know what I mean? Anyway.
I love where things are going. I'm really excited in general with every aspect of filmmaking. And you're right. Like I think it's in the last few years and in the next few years as well, it's really going to open up a lot of doors into how we do things compared to how they've been done in the past.
Yeah. If you're ever at a point when you're in real time, you just change the light and then boost up some stuff here. And I'm like, why can't I do this? And I mean, I know you kind of can, but it's just a different experience. And I just, we're not far away where I know all those guys they're already playing in real time space. I know they are, but new artists coming into this industry should be aware that that's going to be quite a valuable skill set to have, as they move into this world,
Come a long way since Video Toaster and Lightwave, that's for sure.
That's right. Yeah, that's totally,
awesome, man. This has been epic. I really appreciate your time. And
yeah, you got it. Hopefully the guys everyone got something out of this of me just rambling along. So
it's great. Get to tap into, all your creative process and everything else. So where can people go to find out more about you? Obviously your Twitter, I'll link to everything in the show notes.
Yeah, I guess Twitter. I don't really have a website anymore. I need to, but yeah, on Twitter, even my Twitter's not great because I get angry at things and just yell at people, whatever it is. But yeah, Twitter's probably the best way, to keep up with whatever I am doing. That's where I spend a lot of my productive time, unfortunately.
No problem. Awesome, man. Again, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys.